On this James the Bike Guy, we're taking a look at something pretty neat, the Microshift Advent 1x9 drivetrain. This is a low-cost drivetrain to convert yourself to a clutched 1x setup. And the really neat thing here is this drivetrain is available somewhere around $125 to $150, depending on the setup that you use. So we're going to go into what actually makes up this 1x9 drivetrain, how well it shifts on a bike, and then of course we're going to find out the weights of this drivetrain. But before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you can see more videos like this into the future. Now, the really neat thing about Microshift is this is not a new company. You know, there's a whole bunch of good and bad nicknames for Microshift as a brand, but they've been around since 1999, and they're a bike brand that basically allows for some unique component specs where the major brands like, say, SRAM and Shimano are not performing. And that's where this comes in. So currently, you know, your least expensive true 1x drivetrain is either something like a Derailleur drivetrain, or it could be something like an SX drivetrain from SRAM. And both of those drivetrains are great, but they require a lot of cost to be able to upgrade. And what Microshift often does is they produce drivetrains for the OEMs or original equipment manufacturers to be able to make products that are not produced by those big brands. You know, we see this occasionally on different brands like Specialized and things like that, where they want to make a unique bike that just doesn't exist. And that's where this Advent drivetrain comes in. So this is a true 1x setup, you know, not something converted, designed from the factory to be able to be 1x. And it's something that you could pick up anywhere between that $125 and $150 setup for an entire group. And what I mean by an entire group, I'm talking the shifter, I'm talking the derailleur, and the cassette, all the things that are needed to be able to make this happen. And that's where this comes in. So the first thing to talk about is, of course, going to be the rear derailleur. So the rear derailleur can actually span between 11 tooth all the way to 42 on their cassette. And this derailleur is really neat. So it's available either in a non-clutched version, which you might use on, say, a road bike, or to get an even lower cost setup, or you've got this clutched version that we have here. And like the Shimano derailleurs, you actually have the ability to turn the clutch on and off. And what that clutch does is that actually helps control the cage of the derailleur to make sure that it's not jumping around and letting the chain come loose so that it falls off the front chainring. So this derailleur is going to work just like one of those Shimano derailleurs and really be able to have great control of the chain. The other nice thing is when you turn that clutch off, it actually allows you to open up the derailleur pretty easy so that you're able to take the rear wheel on and off. Now, the other things as we're taking a look at this derailleur that I definitely have to say I like is pretty much everything is cast. So on some of the newer large brand derailleurs, all this stuff would be plastic or, you know, a reinforced nylon. And in this case, this is all cast metal. You know, I don't know quite what quality metal, but it's still very neat to see. Now, the other interesting thing about this is the derailleur is going to be able to be either in this 1x9 format, or you can also get it in a 2x9 format as well. And what changes on the derailleur is actually going to be the placement of the upper pulley as well as the cage length. So like on a SRAM Eagle derailleur, the upper pulley is offset. You can see it's above where that B knuckle is. And what that does is as the derailleur rotates, you can actually see that the pivot point is changing. So on a 2x, that's going to change where the upper B tension is. And of course, you don't want that. So on the 1x version like this one, you're going to have that offset pulley so it tracks really well with the cassette, makes great shifting. And on the 2x, that pulley is actually going to be centered around where the B knuckle is. Other things to mention, it's all pinned interface. It's a standard steel cage. Really basic pulleys, though they work just fine, and that's what's important. And one thing that I wish was different is I like on SRAM's products where your adjustments for B tension, for limits, are actually, instead of Phillips heads, they're Allen keys, and that just makes a difference in the ease of being able to adjust the derailleur, and it really keeps it from ever, stripping or wearing out. For a shifter, that's where we're going to take a look at this. So this is the SLM8195R for rear shifter, and now there's two versions of this shifter. There's this version, which is the XPress shifter with a bearing, and then there's a non-bearing setup that actually uses a bushing. But that's another neat place where this actually punches above its price and its quality for sure, is that there's actually a bearing for the shift levers. So this feels really nice, and that's something that both with Shimano and SRAM, you have to pay quite a bit more to get a higher level group set that does that. Now the basic features to it are, of course, this is, very basic quality plastic, but that's okay. It's got plastic levers. Again, not the world's nicest, but for a shifter that's this low cost, they actually feel great. And with 2 throws of the thumb button, you can actually go from the hardest gear all the way to the easiest just with 2 throws. So the multi-click on this works well, single click to go back to harder gear, and then a very standard cast aluminum mount to be able to mount onto the handlebar. I'd love to see something like this where it's got a matchmaker style, but that's just not the case on this, and you know what? For the price, I'm totally okay with it. Now on the bike, it definitely shifts well, and it feels pretty good. For a cassette, we'll take a look at what they call their CS H093 cassette. So this is an 11 to 42 cassette. Now, if you think back, the very first generation of the 1-bys, the X01s and XX1s from SRAM were a 11-speed 10 to 42. So this is nearly that same range as what was a super top-end group set just a little bit ago. But it really brings down the cost. And this is one of the places where you can see how Microshift was able to save some cost. So your 2 smallest cogs here, these are actually going to be just loose cogs. So you can see they're off on their own. You've got your lock ring, and then the whole rest of the cassette, the final remaining 7 gears, are all on a pinned together setup here. So you can see it's running 2 pins. You've got a guide for everything that would have gotten put together that way. You'll see all the pins hold it all together, and it's a pretty basic cassette. So they call this carbon steel cogs, and it's going to go with a little bit larger jumps, going from a 42 to 34, a 28, 24, a 21, an 18, a 15, and then of course your 13 and 11 tooth cogs that you got here. Now it's finished in their ED black coating, which does make it look nice. One of the things that'll be interesting is whether or not that coating holds up with continued use. Now, with this on the bike, I can certainly say it shifts well. So if you look through the video that we have here, you can see the rear derailleur is shifting quite smoothly. It's jumping up and working the way that it should. Out on a trail, it's actually riding really nice as well. Having ridden this a fair bit now, I think it's pretty amazing how well this Advent setup shifts. The shifter has really positive clicks to it. You can feel the detents as they go through, and that works out really well. Now, of course, the rear cassette shifts fine. There's nothing too notable here, but it's really nice to have everything together. So now that we've taken a look at how this shifts and what it looks like, let's go ahead and we'll find out exactly what this weighs in at. So we'll first start off with the shifter. So this is the rear shifter. It is the bearing version. There is a less expensive one that's going to have a bushing, but the bearing version of this shifter, and it's going to come in and weigh a pretty reasonable 129 grams. Nothing too much to talk about there. The rear derailleur, which is the 1-by version with a clutch, is going to come in at a relatively heavy 385 grams. And then, of course, your cassette, which is all carbon steel. Now, they do make a nicer version with an aluminum largest cog, but in this case, it's all steel, is going to come in and weigh a hefty 529 grams. Well, thanks for watching this video on the Microshift Advent derailleur and 1x9 drivetrain. Go ahead and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Can't wait to hear what you think. While you're at it, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you can see more videos like this, and leave a thumbs up. It lets me know you enjoyed the video.